We're joined today by Michael Garciaparra. How do you handle balancing the hype of a player and like the projectability? Is it hard to like block that stuff out and just look at it more from a subjective standpoint? Like, what do I see?
Everybody's chasing rankings, right? These kids, and they love the rankings, the boards and everything. And that's all fun. And there's some people that speak really bad against it and don't like it. I'm like, hey, it's just another goal, right? That a kid wants to achieve and get but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really mean anything. But at the end of the day, as a scout, you're trusting your vision, your eyeballs, and your opinion.
All right, so we're joined today by Michael Garciaparra. The name probably sounds familiar to all of our listeners, which we have to kind of talk about. Obviously, you're Nomar's brother.
Yeah.
Nomar was a first rounder, but you also were a first rounder. And I was just finishing telling you, I actually remember you as a player. That ages me, by the way, because I've been doing this too long. But I guess, how was that? You were drafted in 2001,
Correct.
I think, right? So when you were kind of coming up, this was a totally different time. I mean, even though it was a little more than 20 years ago, the draft has changed exponentially in that time. What's been like the biggest thing that you've noticed with the draft changes?
Just obviously, I mean, I've been doing this for 13 years now in the scouting realm, but like just from, 2001 till now, I mean, you had to sign, you have a signing period, right? There's only a summer time before you have to sign a guy. I mean, I was a guy that almost got on a plane to go to Tennessee and sign the day before I was going to report to school. Right. And so like, I know that part's kind of changed. Obviously the slot values and different things like that, how teams have to save money or not save money and how they allocate funds is definitely different. I mean, you don't have the 28th rounder getting $1.5 million sometimes and everything, they still can, depending how teams, manage their money, they can still offer those kind of things. But, there was no stipulations, right? It was just, if you had it, you had it, you gave it, So I think in that respect, it's kind of changed, and I'm probably evened out a little bit better for some of the smaller market teams and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, no draft and follows. Yeah. That was a different time too. So like, it's definitely evolved into for better or worse, into a different animal for sure.
Well, so you kind of wear many hats, right? You run what I think most people would think is a travel ball team, although I do want to get into, because you don't call it a travel ball team. You say you're not a travel ball team. You're a college development and pro development organization.
Correct.
You also are a scout for the St. Louis Cardinals. And then you also play professional baseball. So I guess putting your scout hat on real fast, how do you handle kind of balancing the hype of a player and like the projectability? And, I feel like there's so much noise out there when you watch a player. It's like, oh yeah, everybody's heard about this kid for the last 5 years. So you're a scout showing up to a game. Is it hard to like block that stuff out and just look at it more from a subjective standpoint? Like, what do I see?
Yeah, I mean, even early on, everybody's chasing rankings, right? These kids, and they love the rankings, the boards and everything. And it's all fun. And it's something I think, there's some people that speak really bad against it and don't like it. I'm like, hey, it's just another goal, right? That a kid wants to achieve and get but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really mean anything, right? In the grand scheme of things. But like I said, it is, you want to compare yourself, you want to challenge yourself, you want to be the best. And yeah, those things kind of happen, right? And so I'm not against rankings or anything. I'm not saying they're bad or worse or indifferent, but for us, if a guy's ranked in the top 10 by any organization or he's not ranked at all, you have to yourself as an evaluator, block all that out. Right. Obviously, third party is third party. It matters because, hey, there's other opinions and you want to take other opinions into perspective and say, hey, okay, what are they seeing that I'm not? But at the end of the day, as a scout, you're trusting your vision, your eyeballs, and your opinion, right? And even in your own scouting department, you're going to have people that disagree with your opinion, and you're going to disagree with them, and I think that's healthy, right? And there's some people that like, oh, we all agree on the same thing, and everybody agrees together. And I'm like, that's probably not a scouting department you want to be a part of, because that shouldn't be it. Because everybody should have different opinions, and that's when you formulate the best pick for the club, right? And that's what it's all about. It's finding the best fit for the club and the best pick at that time. You know what I mean? So like I said, I try to block out the rankings. Hey, you use them as it's more information. More information is better than no information, obviously. or little information. But like I said, you use it and to see where this guy's competed in different
Sure.
things and stuff like that. But I don't think it's the end all be all by any means.
Yeah, I think the ranking sometimes for every parent listening, it's only dangerous when they're taking the ranking as though it means something, right? So to use your words, yeah, I mean, you see a ranking, you know that the guy's ranked high. Not necessarily a bad thing by any means. It's just information. Alex McClure had on the podcast, and he brought that up too. He said, we would be stupid not to just evaluate all of the information that's readily available to us. But I think, yeah, it's dangerous when a parent all of a sudden now is taking the fact that they're ranked high, and that then means I'm going to be a first round pick. So another question for you. So, and this is super rare. So you not only played multiple sports in high school, you played 4.
Yeah.
Right. What is your view? Well, I guess specifically talking about the 4: baseball, football, soccer, and then track. I guess my first question is, how did you do that in high school? Like, are those seasons? They don't.
Yeah, the only seasons that overlap, so it's football first, and then it's soccer, and then it's baseball and track. I was fortunate enough that my track coach I didn't have to go to track practices. I just ran the 400. He just, hey, show up for the races. Soccer was probably my best sport. Kind of coming up. Yeah. And I'll get into another story, but yeah, I would actually, my dad was the assistant coach at the time, the pitching coach at my high school. And they would put the second baseman at short. And then the backup second baseman would be in the 9-hole. I'd go run the 400 meter. And after I was done, I would run straight into the dugout, and they'd form a wall, and I would put on my uniform inside the dugout. And by that time, it was about the first inning or the second inning. And I would go into the 9-hole.
I love it.
Where the second baseman would pop out, and then I would come in and play a baseball game. I would literally change inside the dugout sometime behind a human shield and go right into the game. So it was a little nutty. It was kind of crazy, but I liked it, and I thought, it was cool to play a bunch of sports. I got recruited in 3 of them, football, soccer, and baseball. And at one point I was thinking about playing. I was going to play multiple sports, 2 sports at Tennessee, football and baseball, and then.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Then it was weird. I narrowed my college down to Tennessee and Harvard, which is kind of, random. Those are the last 2. And I would have been the dumbest guy in Harvard. I always say that. And, but they were going to actually let me try to play 3. And I was like, they never had anybody do that.
They were going to let you
soccer. Yeah. They actually recruited me in soccer before the other 2 first. And all 3 coaches recruited me and had no idea that I was being recruited by the other coach. It was kind of funny. I went on a visit there.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. It was really funny.
Do you think kids could even do that today with like the whole travel thing? And
I don't know. I wish they could, because I think something that baseball is lacking is athletes, right? I think we're losing some athletes, and it's not the kids or parents' fault to a degree. I think they're feeling the pressure of having to specialize so young because everybody's doing that now, right? And I think sometimes some of the training and things that we're doing, I say we, but like as an industry or what people are thinking is, it's so baseball specific, but sometimes it's taking the athleticism out of these kids, right? Because this training is just one way all the time, as opposed to, Corey with the Brewers, he scouted me and he goes, man, because you played soccer, your agility and the way you could turn and the way you made plays at short was like definitely because of the way your hips moved and everything in soccer and your footwork. And I'm like, yeah, I think there's a direct correlation to that, right? And so, like I said, but I wouldn't be doing that kind of training as a baseball player, right? They're just not things that you would think about. Yeah, he's going to be agile and do different stuff, but I wish players would do other sports, right? Like I said, I'm an advocate of it. Like, and some people's like, when they come to my travel or my baseball program, they go, hey, is it okay if my son plays football or this? I know most, programs don't like that. I'm like, look, read my bio. Like I preach it, right? Because I want athletes and we're set up so that they can play other sports and don't have to make every event. Yeah. I don't have an ego about it or anything. I'm like, no, go be an athlete, go have fun and go experience other things.
Yeah. And I've been very vocal about that too, because all it takes is to actually have conversations with guys like you. And then you hear what you say about, if a kid was, let's say, playing football as a scout, if he was a senior, I would assume you're probably going to maybe a game or 2 trying to figure out, like, what's this kid's leadership like? What's he doing on the football field that maybe does apply to baseball? What's the training like? How is that different? We had a kid out of the draft this year, Ryan Hall out of Atlanta, star quarterback who, I think if you asked him, like, he didn't go to any of the perfect game stuff. And, a lot of times I think people would assume that to say, oh, he was behind the 8 ball as far as baseball goes. The kid would have never done it differently. He truly enjoyed not only playing with all of his buddies, but just like the training aspect to it all. Yeah, he was a much more dynamic athlete than he otherwise would have been had he never played that. So is there like a trait or something that you think a multi-sport player has that someone who doesn't play multiple sports maybe would lack?
I don't know. I would say it would lack, but like one thing that a multi-sport player has to do is when they're playing that sport, they have to really lock in. They don't get all the reps that, let's just say, a full-time baseball player does, or a full-time soccer player in this instant, or football player, right? Like those guys, so they have to compete and try to kind of play a little bit of catch up, right? I call it a little bit of catch up, but to some degree, I think that little break for some of them is warranted and needed, especially in this game of baseball, which is such a negative sport, right? And you're dealing with failure all the time, which is why I think baseball is one of the best sports to play in the world, just for life in general, to deal with failure, and to deal with all that. But like, I feel like some of those multi-sport athletes, they have to manage their time, they have to manage how they train, how they take care of their body for different sports. And I think if you just correlate that into coming into just playing baseball only, I think they have a little bit of an advantage because they've done it in different facets, right? Yeah. In different ways, and had to manage their body differently, and the way they manage their time, the way they manage their work ethic and all that stuff. To play multi-sports and to be at that high of a level in all those sports is obviously very difficult, and just one, let alone two or three, right? And so I feel like, you know, when you get those guys, and we as scouts and evaluators sometimes take those multi-sport guys, like, man, imagine if this guy just played baseball, right? Yeah. You know, and obviously I was one of those guys, and there's been other guys like that too. I imagine if he just dedicated his time to this, right?
It allows you to dream a little bit, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
No, 100%. And it makes sense, you know, because I wasn't a baseball player first. I was a soccer player first. And then I got cut from the USA team when I was 16. I was in the last cut. There was 25 guys left, and I didn't make the 20-man roster. I was very upset. I was heartbroken. I was crushed. And my dad goes, "Hey, let's try this baseball thing out, like more full-time, or, you know, more than just soccer." And it went really well. He just, you know, my dad obviously dealt with my brother, 5th rounder out of high school, then went to college and was top pick, you know, 1st rounder out of there. And he goes, "Hey, you know, if you stick with baseball, I promise, like, hey, if you do well, you're going to get this. And if you do really well, you'll end up getting signed for this." And he was right to like the penny, you know, like it was pretty crazy.
Reflecting back on your time then, do you think that had you not played multiple sports, just from an industry standpoint of like the desire of the Mariners wanting to sign you in the 1st round, do you think that played on their emotions a little bit? Like you brought this up, like allowing them to dream on, this kid's playing 4 sports. So what is this kid going to look like if we actually just get him to focus on one? And do you think that was one of the biggest things that let them?
I'm sure it's one of the things that led them to right now. And, you know, I would come off of a soccer game, a football game, and I'd go right into scout ball, and I fit right in, right? So they're like, man, this guy's still competing with these guys, or coming to area codes, made the area code team, did well there. And they're like, this guy doesn't do half the baseball that everybody else does, you know, just as a scout too. Hey, imagine if he did, right? Yeah. So I'm sure it did, you know, and you know, I think it did. And like I said, once again, I think now, like, you know, we're still looking for those athletes, right? Like I'm still looking for the athlete. I'm sure you're looking for those athletes, right? And you see that athleticism, because that can carry them into different positions, different things, and make them more versatile and different stuff like that. And so I think that definitely played a big role in it.
Yeah, to share a little bit about how I think sometimes the whole multi-sport conversation gets like misconstrued is, I had a family send me an email asking a question like, "Matt, are you saying that, you know, my son who doesn't play 2 sports should start to play 2 sports because he's going to be hurt, you know, when comparing himself to, let's just say, another player?" And I said to the dad, I was like, no. Playing multiple sports, let's just assume you've played multiple sports your whole childhood and you want to continue playing multiple sports in high school, then do that if that's what you want to do. But don't now in high school say, we need to go play another sport. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. Because now it's like you're trying to read the mind of a scout, and you're really just trying to give them what they want, rather than like, well, if it's not natural to you,
you're forcing it.
Yeah. And it's like not the focus. Well, so let's jump into GBG a little bit. So obviously it's an organization that I know a lot of people know plenty about. I remember the infancy stages of GBG, if you remember, you know, back, what year was that? What was the first year?
2012,
yeah, 2012.
Summer 12, yeah.
But as I brought up, you know, at the beginning of this episode, you guys made it a point to say we are not a travel organization. We are a college development and pro development organization. Where did that come from, and why did you feel the need to make that clear?
Because like that was my main goal, right? Like when I first started this with my dad, who helped me do this, you know, I'd worked for a travel team for like a year, didn't really loved the experience. My dad goes, hey, I've ran travel programs. I ran club soccer teams before. Like, Mike, we can do this. Like, just, I basically recruited all the players that played for me anyway, and got, I feel, I say lucky, but I was blessed to have guys like Eli Morgan, who's in the big leagues. He was on my very first team, but I invited 18 kids or 20 kids to a tryout. 18 of them we kept, and 12 of them turned into Division I athletes. And Eli's the big leaguer out of there with a couple other guys playing pro ball. But we set out to like use our family's name, right? Like it's my brother's name. He made it super famous, but it stems from my father. People know my dad, and he's a longtime coach and everything. And then
your dad was in the meeting when we first met, talking about the team.
Yeah. And so like, and so our goal was like, okay, travel teams are just people that put teams together and go travel and go to tournaments. Okay, that's travel baseball. And they get these kids and they go and we want to help kids get into college, right? And if they're good enough to play professional baseball, great. We want to help them do that too. Like, because my dad obviously did that with us. He's done that with multiple players and, my brother's friends, my friends that are playing pro ball, all that kind of stuff. Like, that's our goal. Like, so a travel team just gets guys together, plays in tournaments and everything. That's their main goal, is to go win tournaments. Like, that's not ours, right? Like, I have a bunch of trophies and they're all in my garage and they're stacked up and everything. And, they're in my garage. And not because I'm not proud of them, but it's because my trophies are my college commit list. All the guys that commit, like on our Instagram and our social media, all those guys, those are my trophies, right? And then the guys that are playing professional baseball, those are the trophies, right? Like that's how I feel we're winning. And then, helping develop good young men too. Like, and so like a college developmental program is, hey, that's what we want to shoot for first, right? Everybody wants to be a big leaguer. I get that. But hey, one step at a time, right? And so as opposed to just going to these tournaments, teaching these kids how to compete and win, right? And it's never been win at all costs for us. It's like, how do we develop them to compete and win so that we can send them off to college, right? That's our main goal. And it's not just chasing the trophy. And that's not, but chasing the competitiveness is what we want to teach, because in college, that's what you have to be. In pro ball, that's what it has to be about. And so that's kind of where I differentiate ourselves. And I hired, after my first year doing this, I said, I have to be different. How do I get in this landscape when the late Mike Spears with ABD, it's really weird. Long story short on him, I talked to him probably 20, 30 times. Never met the man in person, which I'm sad about, because I had just started travel ball and he knew I was getting into it. I have no idea why. He would text me. He would call me. Only a couple of days before he passed, he was still texting me about travel baseball, right? And the world and knowing about travel baseball and how to be different, right? And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do a travel baseball team. And he goes, well, hey, here's how you be different. He goes, he actually advised me to not start in the high school age group, because it's super hard and competitive.
Oh, yeah.
I said, well, I want to be different, Mike, and here's how I want to do it, right? And he goes, okay, that's cool. And so I hired a woman named Ricky Martyr, which nobody else had at the time, and people are starting to catch on, but like, her sole focus is just to help our players and families learn the college process, learn what camps to go to, what camps not to go to, how to email college coaches, how to send them your schedule, what your GPA needs to be, what your SAT scores, all that stuff. Because I was like, how do I help more of these people? This is not my expertise. My expertise, I think I can coach. I think I can develop. I think I can put these guys in the right platform. I can talk to college coaches. I think they believe me, and I'm not going to sell them a bag of goods that they don't want. But how do I help more kids, right? And so I hired her to make our program different, because I want to be able to help them more with the college developmental stuff. And so she gave them a little bit more of a piece. And her son, Jack Martyr, is the recruiting coordinator at Oregon. He was a good player. He was a guy that nobody really thought much of, and he had to bust his butt and work and do all these little things to even become a Division I recruit, let alone a professional baseball player. And that's why I hired this woman, and she's been with me for 13 years now, and that's great. Helped thousands of players, get into college baseball, right, and professional. So that's what I feel like we do differently than a travel baseball program.
I love that, and as I'm sure you would imagine, and you probably get this too. Like, I get so many comments and emails from parents. And there is this preconceived notion that travel baseball, there's this negative connotation with it, right? Like, oh, you're just in it for the money and you just want to get as many good players as you can to win tournaments. And if more people actually slowed down, and this is the part that I want people to hear, this is like your why of like why you have a program. I think every person really needs to evaluate before getting into this space if they want to be a travel baseball or like a college development program. They really need to ask themselves, what am I really doing this for? And like, I've had to do this as an agent, as I'm sure you would imagine, because obviously it's highly competitive as well. And everybody, on the surface, it's like, yeah, you're just trying to sign a bunch of good players. And funny enough, the impetus behind me starting this podcast was I was at the World Wood Bat in Jupiter, and I'm looking at every single agent talk to the same 5 players. And why are we only talking to 5 players? Well, those 5 have the chance to sign for the most money, and agents make money off of the signing bonus, and they want to represent the best. But I'm looking around and I see all these other kids and all these other parents who also want this information, but nobody was talking to them. And so you've gamed the system in a way, and not for a bad thing, actually to benefit them, and say, yeah, I actually want to do the little things that no one wants to spend time doing. That's where I want to be different. That's like, I commend you. That's incredible.
And it's funny. Like I'll sometimes be like, when people ever say, oh, it's a money grab or it's this, I'm like, we cut over 300 kids a year. Like as a baseball business, and I've learned from other people in this business, like in this industry, like never cut anybody. Find another team, make another team, make this, do this. And I'm like, hey, like, no, we're not for everybody. And and not to say we want to cut anybody, because we want to help develop people as we can, but we want to have like a standard and what we're trying to send out into the world. And it's not all pro guys, Division I, it's D2, D3, NAI. We just want them to be wanting to love the game and play at the next level.
Yeah.
Like that's what we want. And people are like, oh, you only care about your top teams. And they're like, there's no chance. If we spend more time and effort on our D2, D3, NAI, JUCO guys than we do on our top guys, because the guy throws 95. He doesn't need much help.
Right.
He needs guidance on what not to do most of the time, more so than what we tell him to do in the phone calls. Like those guys are the easy ones, right? The harder ones is like the ones, hey, those guys that are, mid 80s, or, the guy hasn't hit their growth spurt yet. But like, he's a gamer, he's a ball player, trying to help them find the right fit for them to get into college baseball. That's where majority of our time and effort is, right? So it's not just going after the top players, because those guys don't need as much help as you can. They do, because they can get steered in the wrong direction, right? But it's those other guys that we take a lot of pride in too. So whether a guy commits to UCLA, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, or a guy commits to a Chapman or Westmont or what have you, RCC, doesn't matter. We're just as happy, right? Because the time and effort that it takes for that guy, and how happy I get, like I'll get a call at 10 o'clock at night and be fired up and can't go to sleep because a guy commits to, a school period. We have 8 kids right now that got cut from their high school team playing college baseball.
Wow.
Right. I mean, granted, we're in California where, a guy can throw mid 80s and get cut, from a high school team. But like, now he's throwing 91 or whatever, but he's playing college baseball. And that's just our goal. Right.
That's great.
So I get just as much joy out of that as a guy who commits to, LSU.
Well, and tell everybody what your website is real fast.
It's GarciaParraBaseball.com.
So the reason I bring that up, and to your point, there's a handful of things that I saw on the website that I do want to point out, which I think is fantastic. So you make a comment on there. We're not just after better players, but better young men. And then you said, we're not looking to be better, we're looking to be different, right? I love that you guys said that. You guys also talk about how you play, I think it was, you play or train on 4 Sundays a month, from June to the end of December, which is, again, unique because so many other programs, it's like, every weekend, doesn't matter, we're doing it, you have to come. One of the other things, you can play on other teams, and other programs, actually, it's the opposite. No, you can't play on other teams. And then one of the other things I noticed was you actually bring up that there are going to be some kids that are going to be asked just to be POs. And you specifically reference, like, not how the conversation goes, but that there will be a conversation that happens. And it's a case-by-case basis. Correct. But that's a perfect example, just that last one there, where it's like, it's personalized. If you as a scout, because you again, wearing 2 hats, like you have the luxury of, you're looking at them from the standpoint of, I played the game. You're looking at them from the standpoint of, I know as a scout what I'm looking for. And then also as somebody who runs this program, who knows how to develop, you're kind of looking at all of those things.
Correct.
So that specific thing about the POs, I imagine that's a hard thing to do, because how many dads and moms in high school are, comfortable thinking like, what are you talking about? My son, he's the best hitter on the high school team. Like, he can hit. And you're watching it from this scout eye saying like, well, what's your goal?
Correct.
Right? If your goal is to go play in college, you can be a hitter in high school. But if you're going to the next level, like, again, what if we devoted more time to this PO thing? So how have you found those conversations go?
You know what? I mean, sometimes they're hard because they've been taken hard, right? But we're about telling the truth. We're about telling people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear, right? And that's another difference between, I think, travel baseball teams and college developmental teams. Like, we're trying to give you the right information so that you can play in college baseball or professional baseball, right? And being honest, right? And so it's just an honest conversation. It's like, hey, there's going to be times when you want to play on our top team, and we feel like your son's, what he's going to be sought after is as a pitcher. Like, he plays third base. Okay, great. He plays third base. Well, he's like a semifinal or a type of finals type pitcher for us, right? And he's a dude. If I play him at third base for the first 5 games, is his arm going to be like dude-ish, right? Like, is it going to be ready? Because he's going to be throwing it how many times in between innings? He's going to warm up before every game. He's going to be playing normally we're in Arizona. It's only 115 there.
Yeah.
And you want him to go get seen by a college coach. He's 88 to 91, but when we throw him, he's 84 to 87. Still might be super effective, but if this is what you want him to be, or this is what we project him to be in college, and in reality, I think at some points, the parents know that.
Yeah.
When we offer that, they know that their upside's on the mountain. They see that, but they want him to hit as long as possible. And so do I. Because once again, I want them to be athletic. I want them to do other things that make them a better pitcher, right? And I think playing a position can be because of flexibility and different other things. But those conversations are just honest conversations. Like, here's why we think it's going to benefit you to be a pitcher only in some circumstances. But then we have workouts. Like last Sunday, we had a workout. Just because you're a PO with us, go do the infield, go do the outfield, go do the hitting, go do everything. No, we're still going to try to help you for your high school season. But there's certain events and certain times where we're going to just have you as a pitcher only because it's to benefit you.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's where I think it's also important and smart of you to really help these guys identify, like, what are your goals? Like, let's actually talk about that and get that out of the way. Because if your goal is to truly be a legitimate player at the next level, that's going to require, like, you're going to have to hear some, it's going to be a hard conversation. You're going to have to hear some criticism on some level, and you have to be open-minded to that. If your mom or dad is saying that you can hit, and your high school coach is saying you can hit, but all of these scouts, all of these travel teams, whoever it is, the information that you're getting is that maybe that's not the case. Just pause for a moment and actually think, could there be some truth to that? Because this isn't a conspiracy. This isn't like everybody's just out to get you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Walk us through, I guess, like a traditional evaluation. If you're going to go to a high school game and you're going to look at a draft or a college prospect, what does that look like? Kind of the first time you see a kid, not after seeing him 5 or 6 times, because I know that changes, right? If you've seen him a ton, obviously it's different. But the first time, like, are you like stepping back a little bit and you trying to like look more broad, or is it like more specific? How do you do that?
I'm kind of more broad, really. I mean, meaning like I want to see what the overall package is, right? I mean, it happened this week. We're out here at Area Codes, and I'm fortunate enough to coach the underclass, and you're first getting these first glimpses of some of these guys you've never seen, right? But I'm looking for athleticism. I'm looking. I mean, we're here evaluating tools, just like you guys are as an agent. Like, what are these tools? Are they going to play in the big leagues, or what tools that he has that can be a carrying tool? So I feel like you're kind of looking at the overall thing, like, okay, what is this guy as a player? But then you kind of hone in on the specifics, like as far as like, okay, how the arm works, how the body works, where is he going to fit position wise? What does he profile as? You know what I mean? Yeah, he's a shortstop now, but he's 6'3", 210 already. He's probably going to move, right? Like some of the more basic stuff, but like those are things that you just kind of like on a broad spectrum, you can kind of see. And then you kind of hone on like the individual skills. Okay, how's the back going to play? Is there a run tool? Is the arm good enough to play on the left side? Certain stuff like that. So like I said, it's kind of like generalities, and you're just trying to narrow it down and then put these guys in separate buckets, right? Or groups, right?
Yeah. And so the more you now see a kid, how does that focus now start to narrow?
I mean, I have a saying actually in my travel program that I even do it when I teach kids or give talks, and I have a saying now. It's separate yourself always in all ways, right? And I say separate yourself always in all ways, meaning you can separate yourself in a negative way too.
Sure.
But if you can separate yourself always in a positive way, you're going to separate yourself from your teammates. You're going to separate yourself from the people that you're playing against. You're going to separate yourself from somebody else who does the exact same thing you do in that position. So I'm looking as a scout, I'm looking for separators, right? I'm looking what makes this player different from everybody else on the field. And why does he stand out? What is he separating himself? There's little gamers, there's these little guys are like, man, this guy's arm, like these little things that are separating himself. So I'm always looking for separators, because I mean, in reality, those guys that are in the big leagues, they have separated themselves from the guys that aren't there. And to get to pro ball, they've separated themselves from guys in college and in high school. So I'm just looking for the separating tools that are going to get that player to the next level.
Yeah. What's interesting is, and I'm sure you'll probably get a chuckle out of this too, is, oftentimes when you go through the draft process, the expectation of a player or even their family, as far as when they think about their son, I think every parent wants to think they have a chance to be the best, first rounder, big leaguer, whatever it is. And you can talk to a scout, and that scout will tell you, we think your son is really good. Like, we really, really like him. And to the parent, it's like, oh, you really like him as a first rounder. And it's like, well, no, for us, he's not a first rounder, but like, we like him in the 7th round, but like, we really like this guy. And there's this disconnect with like, oh, but if you say you really like him, doesn't that only mean the first round and like you don't like everybody else? It's like,
I can feel like that for sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I think that's like, it's a funny dynamic that plays out every once in a while.
Yeah. And I think once again, people don't know what they don't know. Right. And so like, they don't understand that we have big leaguers in the 7th and 8th round. You have big leaguers in the 10th and 11th round. You have big, I mean, at one point with the Cardinals, I mean, I think we had 5 big leaguers after the 20th, and those rounds don't even exist anymore, right? It was crazy. They were in our starting lineup. The Rosenthals, Matt Adams, and different guys like that. You're like, wow, like
shout out to Big City.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. But those type of guys, and like we like him, and this is what that means. But what even as an area scout, and I think back in the day, with Dan Kantrovitz was my scouting director at the time when I first got into this thing, and the Cardinals, we've always kind of brought John Mazeliak, always brought our scouts in and everything. And I'm glad that he did that because we hear other area scouts talk about their players, right? And then we get to talk about our players. And we're not just hearing that, like, we're not just listening or just being in the room. We want you to listen, lock in, and focus on that player because we don't get to see the whole country, right? As an area guy, parents don't get to see the whole country, right? And this is kind of how I equivalent that is like, if they could see the whole country and know how big this bucket of players that have the same skill set as my son, I should be honored that they think of him as a 5th or 6th, 7th rounder, right? Because to even be considered a 5th, 6th, 7th rounder, you have separated yourself from millions of baseball players throughout the world in reality, right? But as a parent, I get it. But they don't get to see that. And that's why I thought it was really cool ever since like I said, I've only known the Cardinals, but we've always been guys that go to the draft room, go to meetings and collaborate with our other scouts and listen to them. Because then I can see, okay, man, what is the SEC different from the pack that used to be the pack or vice versa? Like, okay, what we have that they don't, just so that you can compare. But if a parent can't really do that, and you can't really do that based on a ranking video or anything like that and stuff like that. So I think that's where that disconnect can definitely happen, or they just focus on, man, well, this is my son. And of course, you're your son's biggest fan, right? As you probably should be. So I don't blame them for thinking that, but I think once again, if they don't know what they don't know, it's kind of, let me help you educate them, right? And I'm sure you have to do that as an agent as well.
Oh, undoubtedly, yeah. The majority of our job is actually guiding them through a lot of that stuff.
Correct.
So as a scout, as you come in, you're now evaluating the next class of guys. When you start having these, call them in-home visits, meetings, whether it's Zoom or actually in person, what are some things that you would say are kind of like red flags that, and I think people need to hear this because I think sometimes players and parents want to express perfection. Like, I need them to think we are perfect in every possible way. That's not realistic. Like, everybody's different. Be yourself, be comfortable. Because you guys, when you walk into a room, like, you're going to notice if the player is really uncomfortable and he's trying, you ask him a simple question and he can't answer because he's like going through his mind about what's the perfect answer to give. What's like some red flags that you would say that you've seen?
You know what? It's weird. It's like those perfect, where you say, I haven't seen really many kids be like not knowing what to really say, because I think now I only deal with the California kids, right? Most of these guys are not low profile, right? They're not hidden. They're not secrets. They all have advisors, and they've been, they've been coached, right? But so I don't see like a coached answer as a red flag, because that's the agent's job, right? That's to prepare the kid, prepare the family for these questions that we're going to ask. But when I do hear a coached answer, I try to work around it, right? Like, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I just really want to be the best. Working this, I'm like, hey, well, what does that mean to you? They're like, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean? That's a follow-up? Like, I was like, well, I just want to be the best hitter. I was like, well, what does being the best hitter mean to you? Or what does being the best pitcher? I was like, I want to be the best pitcher. I was like, okay, what? Like, how do you think that's gonna? What's your definition of that? Right. So I try to ask questions. If they're going to give a rehearsed answer, which is, I get it. Hey, they don't know what you don't know. Once again, this is what they were taught. But like, I'm going to try to get something more out of you, because I want to know you as a person and how you tick or how you don't tick. And it's okay. Like I said, if you could be super quiet, shy, all this other stuff, and then a crazy animal on the mound. Or you could be a crazy animal, like a little bit like wild man, but super focused on the field. Like it's all different strokes for different folks, and no two kids are ever the same. They're very similar at times, but like I want to know what that is. Like, so as far as red flags, it's really like, I mean, I don't really get on the kid for some of the answers, because I mean, sometimes they're just a product of their environment. Sure. Or like, hey, it's, speak when spoken to players and stuff like that, or the kids that are super shy and everything, or they look to their parents for the answers. I'm like, hey, we don't really like that because we're trying to interview the kid, but like they're probably just used to doing that, right? And so you just try to get as much information as you can to the kid, or get a feel of who he is and what he's going to be. And then when we do character reports and we write, what we know about the kid and their makeup and stuff, we take all that into account and say, hey, is he a right fit for our organization, right? And, we have a thing called the Cardinal Way, and it's a thing, right? The Cardinals, I've been blessed to work for this organization, but they expect a certain type of player, expect a certain type of mentality. And if a guy's not perfect, there's no such thing, right? There's no such thing as a perfect guy. And in fact, some of those guys kind of scare me, right? You know what I mean? Because I'm like, this is a little too good to be true.
Yeah,
right?
Of course. As an agent, when we're talking to the families and the kid about these meetings, I always, I try to make it so clear where I'm like, look, there is generally a way to handle this, but just listen to the question. Because even the thing that you followed up with, right? It's not a really complex question that you followed up. It's like, all you said is, what does that mean to you? So just, what is the answer?
Yeah, I'm not trying to get, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Like, not at all.
Right.
Yeah.
What makes you unique? This. Okay. And what does that specifically mean to you? How do you train that? How do you? Why is that important to you? If you just listen to the answer, you're having a conversation.
Correct.
As uncomfortable as that may feel for a 17, 18-year-old kid who's talking to an adult who's got all this experience, and you were a first rounder and all this, it can be overwhelming. But it doesn't need to be complicated. No. I think when they try to rehearse it, that's what makes it complicated. Sure. And now it's like taking a test and trying to memorize the answer. It's never going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like I said, I feel like I'm pretty good at being engaging with kids and parents and everything. And I have my 10,000 hours now dealing with parents for a living, right? Doing the work that I do, not just scouting, but with our baseball program is, I'm more of a counselor and evaluator and talking to parents and kids and dealing with them. So kind of knowing, how to approach the situation in those visits and everything, and to make them all feel comfortable, so that it is just a conversation and not like I'm testing them.
Yeah.
Right. Or it's not a job. It is a job interview for the kid. Right. But I don't want them to feel like, oh my gosh, this is a do or die job. I'm not going to feed my family kind of job interview, right. Which I feel sometimes kids, they feel like that.
They treat the in-home visit as though the draft is 10 seconds after you walk out of the door.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, all right, we're taking them or we're not taking them. Like, that's not how this goes.
Yeah, not at all.
Right?
Yeah.
So you talked about the Cardinal Way a little bit. When you say the Cardinal Way, I start thinking about, all right, well, what's the makeup of the player? Because I know what the Cardinal Way is. You can just look at the players that the Cardinals have drafted, the success that you guys have had out of the draft. Talk to me a little bit about makeup, what it means. What are some of like the biggest things that you try to focus on?
I mean, there's no one thing, right? Because like I said, players, they all beat to a different drum, right? But it's just like, I mean, with the Cardinals, it's like guys that buy in. And like I said, we don't, and I know our player development, there's no one way to teach. There's no one way we teach our pitchers. No one way we teach our hitters, I mean, and I think we, Randy Flores and our organization has done a great job of like having the player development people being in the room, right? Having the people that we can ask questions to is like, okay, what are we doing? How are we working with players? How are we developing them? But like, as far as the makeup standpoint is, just people that are willing to learn, right? Like that are open to learn, that are open to coaching and developing, and not just like, hey, I'm this way or no way. And there's been players like that. There's been players like, hey, I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to do this. And you're like, okay, that's okay. But are you willing to,
be open-minded?
Be open-minded. Yeah. And because they even tell us like certain pitchers and different things, like are they a drive line guy? Are they this guy? Are they a heavy ball guy? Are they a long toss guy? What kind of guys are they? Because they want to adapt to that. They don't want to change guys right away, because I feel that leads to, and they feel that it probably leads to a really nice way to get someone hurt, right? That haven't been doing a certain thing, and then you just jam it down them. That's not going to work. And these guys are so big, so fast and strong now, and teaching them something right away that they're not comfortable with, probably not the best way to go about it. So I do like that we can adapt in that way, and they give us that leeway and for the kids. But, just if a kid wants it, man, you got to love this thing, you know? And I tell people this to a fault. Like I didn't have fun playing baseball, right? And I didn't love playing it because I put too much pressure on having to be perfect or having to be like my brother and everything. Like I loved playing soccer. I had nobody to compare it to. I had uncles that played professionally in Mexico, like soccer's in the blood too and everything and stuff like that. But like I put too much pressure on myself. And even when I coach and I teach and I'm looking at makeup, I'm like, is a guy having fun? Even if he's a serious guy, like there's a competitive and a fun side to them because you got to love what you're doing. There's serious guys that love baseball and they're serious as heck. And that's okay, but they love it. And I'm trying to look for that love. And I'm like knocking myself for not like loving it. I put so much pressure on myself thinking I had to hit 300 when 250 was the average back in the day. And I was hitting over 250 almost every year.
Yeah.
Right? Like, but not giving myself credit for it. Right. And so that's why I try to find players, okay, what do you like about your game? What do you think needs to improve? Like when you're going bad, what are you looking for? So I'm trying to find different things that they're trying to find. And I'm like, okay, what's like their love? What's their passion? What do they think that they need to give? And do they even understand what it is? And if they don't, hey, that's okay.
Yeah, be honest.
Yeah, just be honest with me.
Because you're also a young kid who maybe you haven't figured that out.
Yeah, or there's guys that haven't really dealt with failure very often, right? You know, and stuff like that, which is, this game's going to humble you, as we all know, you know, for sure. But yeah, it's just that guy, like, is he a baseball life? I want lifer. I want guys that are baseball guys, right? Yeah. And guys that are bought in and this is what they want to do. Because once again, is this guy without that love and desire, it's going to be really hard for him to separate himself, right? And because when it gets tough, you still have to fight through that barrier. And if you can have that love and desire to want to separate yourself from, you know, your slumps or your 0 for 4s or your, you know, 4 home run games that you give up or something like that, it's going to be really, really hard, right? And so once again, just, you know, trying to find out what makes them tick, right? It really is, because and once again, we have different ways that our you know, our organization deals with those guys and to try to get the best out of them.
I want everybody to hear this too, because I think sometimes it's easy to assume, oh, the reason you're looking at makeup or the reason you're looking at these things about makeup is because you read a book that the Cardinals gave you and it says these things are important. No. At the end of the day, the reason why does this guy want it? That question is so important is because you know, your organization knows, the entire industry knows. At the next level, when you reach that failure, if you don't want it, you're never going to want to do what it takes to actually separate yourself and get past that moment. Like everybody's going to fail. We had Zach Scott, the old GM of the Mets, on the podcast, and he actually brought up a great point. He's like, look, what we would talk about all the time is how do we recreate this failure environment as quickly as possible? Because if a guy hasn't failed in the minor leagues, and I remember like we represented Joey Votto, he was a guy who hit every single level and he did struggle in the minor leagues at certain levels. And he was so frustrated that he had to hit every level. And it was like, I'm ready to move up. But then there was a guy like Jay Bruce who shot through the minor league system, who never failed in the minor leagues. His first taste of failure was actually at the big league level. So, you know,
I saw him hitting the minor leagues.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, he's really good.
Well, like you're gonna fail. So the reason for everybody listening, it's like the reason why they are focused on makeup is because they know for every player, you need to have some of these characteristics. And if you don't have it yet, it doesn't mean that you can't build and grow into having that. But if you just think, I'm gonna hide my way through this, I'm going to game the system and like be the one guy that never fails. I mean, everybody listening is probably like, yeah, of course not. That's impossible. But how they talk and how they evaluate the parents, oftentimes it's saying that.
Sure.
Right?
For sure.
You brought up something that I do want to kind of touch on though. So you brought up your brother, because I was thinking about this, like, yeah, your brother was a first round pick. Everybody knows what this guy's done in the big leagues. It's super impressive. You know, you hear your name and I think everybody's like, oh yeah, you must be Nomar's brother.
Yeah.
How as a player did you deal with, like what were the things that you focused on to try to not worry about? Hey, I'm Nomar's brother, but like, that's not going to define me.
You know what? It was a constant struggle. Like, right. And so, like I said, I think that, you know, something and I tell young players now, and even like my son, I'm like, dude, psychologists, work with sports psychologists, work at things, because there's things that I had to deal with in pro ball as far as failure. And I failed when I was younger too and everything, but as far as failure on a different level, but I was adding so much extra pressure on myself. Yeah. Right. And And I don't think I educated myself on what is actually good. What are we looking for? What do they need me to do? Or stuff like that, as opposed to being like, searching for that 300 number, or, being such a good shortstop, or doing all these things. And I put a lot of unwarranted pressure on myself. And that's why even with like my coaching philosophy and different things, like, hey, I want people not to take a pitch off. I want people to be in every game. I want you to compete all the time and all this other stuff. But I also like to mess around and have some fun, right? Because I took that game a little too serious to the point where I didn't get the enjoyment out of the game.
Right.
And so, like I said, that part of it was a struggle. It was a constant struggle until the day I stopped playing. Right. And once again, it goes to like the whole makeup thing. Like, I had really good makeup. I did want it. I loved baseball. I love baseball now, but I didn't love the pressure that I put on myself when I played it, because I was trying to live up to a standard that was not an unachievable standard, but dang, this dude was pretty good, and like I said, when my brother is one of the best people on the planet, right? Like, people talk about my brother, and man, he was such a good player and everything. And I said, that's awesome. I said, but he's a better human being.
Yeah.
Right. And so many people were like, man, I was a minor leaguer. I came up and your brother was always so cool to me. And I'm like, that's the stuff that my parents are the best in the world. And they taught us, like, man, you want to be known as a good ball player, great, but we want you to be known as a better person.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the kind of philosophy that they've always taught us. And that's what I want out of our GBG players and even guys that we draft. I want these guys, hey, good people and like good representative of the Cardinals organization, right? And stuff like that. And that's what the Cardinals were looking for too, right? And so, like I said, but the dealing with the failure and the extra pressure that I put on myself, I try to teach kids and I bring these things up because I want them to learn from my failures, right? Because those were my failures and those were my struggles, and they still haunt me. And I mean, shoot. I mean, today people are like, oh, your brother's baseball program is really good. And I'm like, well, he doesn't have a baseball program, hilarious. But I appreciate it, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that they don't know. And that's okay. Like we use the name and people are like, oh, you used your brother's name. I was like, it's my name.
Yeah, right.
And it's actually my father's name, but I use it. I'm like, but if our name helps people be noticed, then use our name.
Yeah, of course.
So use my name. I don't care. Like, people are going to pick up the phone if a Garcia Parra is on the thing. And when they first started, like, is this Nomar, Michael, or Ramon? Like, people didn't know. College coaches didn't know. And so, like I said, there's been good and bad from it. Like, I mean, my brother, like, he's been super helpful. He'll help me with anything that I ever want with this stuff. And he helped me when we first started. And still, he's like my consigliere to this day, right? I still reach to him for knowledge and for some advice. But yeah, like I said, it was a constant struggle trying to be like, okay, am I good enough? Am I ever going to be good enough? Which was something I shouldn't have done. And that's another thing I told him. I said, don't compare yourself to players that are ranked. Don't compare yourself to this player. Be the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's almost an unattainable goal, right? To even be, like an all-star, like as good as these all-stars are going to be. Hopefully you are one day, but don't measure that up and then surpass that person, right? Like, go do that. But like, don't set yourself that I have to be on this pedestal. I got to be this. I got to be that. Like, that's not it. Like, hey, I got to be the best version of myself to get there. And then it'll figure out, life will figure us out. Baseball will figure out who you are in that game once you get there. But don't try to be there right now because it doesn't work.
And it's kind of crazy for people. And I understand, like, yes, your brother was a massive name, is a massive name, right? You were a first round pick. Like, you weren't a 19th round pick. You were a first round pick. You played 9 professional seasons. Like, you've done a lot of good stuff in the game. You said something which I do think I want to point out, which is, you didn't enjoy playing the game because you were trying to live up to this thing. And the reality is like, that actually comes from a really good thing inside. And that's what I want these people to hear too, because somebody could hear that and say, oh, you should have changed. And it's like, it's not you should have changed. It's like the impetus behind you caring so much was really good. You wanted people to realize that you have something too. And I think in today's day and age, maybe kids now have almost an added benefit of having, like the mental skills coaches. Like it's much more common today than it ever was back then.
For sure. It was almost shunned. You were almost like you're weird. I mean,
something's wrong with you if you're like talking to somebody.
30 years ago, if you went to go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist, you're like, oh, dude, this guy's got mental issues. And now it's just like, we all need to go see him, right?
Yeah, right.
We all should have one, right?
What do you mean you're not seeing somebody? You need to find somebody.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's something I wanted to point out, because for anybody listening whose kid maybe doesn't have the same dynamic, but I was talking to one of my clients. I've actually brought this up on the podcast multiple times. In spring training, funny enough, with a mental skills coach that we actually use with a lot of our players was at the dinner. And we were having a really in-depth conversation. I asked my client, I said, so I've had him ever since the draft. He's now 30 years old, got to the big leagues last year after 10 seasons,
Nice.
like kid grinded through. And I said, what could I have told you at 18 that would have resonated so that you didn't have to spend all of this time learning this lesson? Like the lesson that you now are telling me that you've learned. What could I have told you at 18? Was there anything? And I think it's almost an unfair question too, because like, well, no, because even if you would have told me, I'd have said like, dude, whatever. I
wouldn't approach it the same way. Right?
His answer was interesting. So at first he goes, I don't know. Let me think about it. He calls me the next day. He goes, I thought about it. I have an answer. And I love that he like called me after and like was still, pondering it. And he said, I think if I would have accepted that I would have been fine if this game never would have worked out, so much pressure would have been lifted off my shoulders. Getting comfortable in my own skin as a human being and not just as a baseball player. Because how many of these kids, and I'd say it's probably worse today, because they're not only a baseball player because they're a first round pick at 18 years old. Now they're the number one kid ranked in the class at 15. And so they're almost like thinking about being a professional at 15, where all of a sudden now they get to college, and if it doesn't work out for them in the draft and now they have to go get a real job, it's like, who am I not as a baseball
player?
Your
identity.
This is a bad thing. Exactly. Yeah. And so he brought that up to me and I'm like, no offense, but I think if I would have told you that, you probably would have been like, get out of here. Like, be comfortable in my own skin, not being a baseball player. Yeah. Dude, are you trying to convince me that I'm not going to be good enough? But it is. It's this game, everybody knows, like the majority of it is mental.
Yeah. And like I said, like, love playing. Like, I loved baseball. I loved that I got to play for 10 years in the minor league. I was in the game for 10 years professionally and still in the game now, right? Like, I absolutely love baseball. I just didn't love the pressure that I put on myself and the way that I went about it. And that's why that's what I want to convey to people. Like, there's different ways to go about it, different ways. And it wasn't a product of what my parents put pressure on me, nobody else. It was me mentally, and I was mentally strong because I battled through a lot of stuff. I battled through injuries. I battled through 40-man, different stuff like that, being behind Chase Utley and Jimmy Rollins with the Phillies. And like, geez, am I ever going to get a chance? These guys are really freaking good, right?
Sure.
Stuff like that. And thinking you're going to make the team out of spring and then getting flipped. Like, it's baseball's a crazy, nutty world, right? But like, I loved the experience. And people always tell me like, well, do you think you should have went to Tennessee to play football and baseball? I said, absolutely not. Like, I wouldn't be where I am today. I have a wife and 3 kids, and I get to help kids for a living, right? And as much as I sometimes will complain about life and everything, I realize like, dude, I do baseball for a living.
Right.
Like, I'm one of the luckiest dudes on the planet, and I get to literally help with GBG stuff and the scouting. We get to help dreams come true. Like, I get to sleep, I don't sleep that much because I work a lot, but I get to fall asleep at night knowing like, man, I get to do something really freaking cool, right? And those experiences that I had that I learned from and that I get to teach now and help people learn from my experiences, I think benefits baseball as a whole, makes me feel really good.
Yeah.
Right. And like I said, so, I mean, there's times when I want to quit, doing the GBG stuff because it's overwhelming. And then all of a sudden the kid commits. And once again, it could be the smallest school. It doesn't matter, but it just lights me up. And like, I'm doing this for a reason, and I'm doing it for the right reasons. And I've been blessed to do this. Like I said, I love what I get to do. I really do. I love what I get to do now. And I said, I love that I had to go through those experiences. I didn't know it at the time because I hated them at the time. But man, I love that it's helped me grow and helped me teach, the younger kids of what's going on. And yeah, it's going to be struggle. It's going to suck. You're going to struggle, but like, let's approach it in a different way and not put these heavy pressures on yourself. Once again, like the player you're talking about, it's just like, this isn't just who you are. I actually did that growing up. Like, I don't have friends. I'm not as close to my friends in high school because I was embarrassed to come home because I wasn't a big leaguer.
Oh,
like,
wow.
They didn't care. They just wanted to hang out with MG. I was MG back in the day. I wasn't there. I was GAR and Pro Ball. But I was like, they just wanted to hang out. But like, I alienated some of my friends because I was embarrassed to be around them because I was 20 years old. I wasn't in the big leagues yet. And my brother wasn't in the big leagues till he was 22. Like, but for some reason, I put unwarranted pressure. And that's why I tell people, like, you don't put that kind of pressure on yourself. It was stupid of me to do that.
Yeah.
And nobody else was putting it on me. Frank Maddox, who was a guy with the Mariners, God rest his soul. He's just like, dude, you're fine. Like, you're on the trajectory. Pat Gillick, you're fine. You're on the trajectory we expect you to be on. You weren't a full-time baseball player. You're good. And, I thought when I was about 22 years old, like, I was knocking on the door, right? 23, like, I was right there where they said I was going to be. A couple of injuries knocked me out from getting called up and different stuff, and things all happened for a reason. But like I said, those kind of things, like, we all get to learn from in life. And if kids can learn from you, like that's a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great point. All right. Last question.
Mm-hmm.
You got to finish the sentence.
Oh, geez.
Okay. If I could change one thing about how travel baseball culture markets kids and scouts, it would be, and then there's a second component to that.
To try to be more honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason that would help both players and evaluators is
because you're giving people a more realistic view of who they are and what they can be, right? So giving them the truth now is going to help them become a better player down the road, right? Like if I'm selling this guy a false bag of goods or telling him how good he is and how much we like him and telling what he wants to hear and not what he needs to hear, I'm not doing him any favors. I feel like if we're just telling these kids what they want to hear all the time, just to make them feel good and to keep playing for your team, their struggles down the road, they're not going to be able to deal with the failures. They're not going to be able to work on their weaknesses now that are going to arise later on, right? You know, I use the thing like, oh, this swing's not, you know, he's got a metal bat swing, right? You know, and not a wood bat. Like, okay, what does that mean, right? Okay, well, you're long, you get away with it because it's aluminum bat and everything. Like, okay, but if I'm not telling you this now, even though you might struggle now, I'm trying to help you in the future. So I think it's just giving them the truth now, right? And even the evaluator, like, okay, the travel ball world and hyping up now, like, okay, yeah, here's the truth. We think you're really good, but here's also things that you can get better at. And like I said, not knocking down guys, not doing anything because I'm all about being positive and saying the right things, but it's just being honest, right? I just feel like there's so much kind of smoke and mirrors. And once again, like telling people what you feel like they want to hear just to keep the kids happy. I'm like, it's not about making them happy. It's about giving them stuff that's going to make them a better player so that they get to play longer.
Yeah.
Because if these guys can't deal with failure and because they've been not being given the truth at a younger age, they're done after 3 years of college. They might not even get to pro ball because they weren't told the truth now.
I love that. What a way to end it. This is great, bro.
Sweet. That was fun.
All right.
It's cool.